he followed the example of the Saudi royal family by interpreting Islam's permission to take 4 wives as permission to take 4 wives at a time, not 4 wives over the course of a life. And so he maintained...
He could have lived in Colorado or Utah or Texas.
Yes, exactly. Well, the way he managed his life was that he had 2 senior wives to whom he remained married for long periods and had many children with. And then he had 2 other positions, I guess, that he serially married and divorced in. And that was where the great many of his children were singleton sons or daughters born to wives that he remained married to only for short periods of time.
54 kids altogether.
54, 29 daughters and 25 sons.
And where does Osama fit in that line?
Well, the family submitted to a U.S. federal court the only really authentic record of the births of Muhammad's children. And it was a very interesting document to work with because it was all in the Islamic calendar, so I had to get a converter and convert everything into Roman dates. But when you line it all up and look at it, there was a period in the late 1950s. Essentially, Muhammad's 54 are all boomers. They were all born between the mid-40s, and the last of them was born after his death in 1967.
Except Salam, his oldest, born around 1940.
42, 43. I don't know when you really, I guess it...
Boomers are 45.
45, okay. So actually then there's a daughter and at least one son who were before, but the rest all from 1946 to 1967. And there was a period there in the late 1950s where he had quite a lot of children all at once. And Osama was in that grouping, probably born in January 1958. And by my conversion calendar kind of grid making, there seemed to have been 4 children born in the same month,
Wow.
Certainly the same Islamic month. And
this is before Viagra.
This is before. He would have been about 49 or 50, so still reasonably energetic, apparently. And it was standard to say that Osama was the 17th son, but when you look at these records, really, I don't see how you could be confident about that. He's 17 to 20 would be about what I would say.
One of the first 2 wives, or one of the temporary wives?
One of the shorter-term wives. Actually, a child, really, to be honest about it. She was about Osama's mother I'm speaking of. She was 15, 14, and she was the daughter of a very poor and relatively secular family in coastal Syria when this traveling businessman, 3 times her age, turned up. And the circumstances in which the family presented her to Mohammed bin Laden as a wife are murky, but they seem to have been transactional, at least in the sense of her brothers and cousins being promised jobs. That was typical of how he took these shorter-term wives. If he was going into a tribal area where he was building a very complicated highway project, he would take the wife of the local sheikh in marriage and then give all of her brothers jobs, finish the road, have peace in labor peace, and then after the job was finished, divorce the wife and leave these people with maintenance roles and move on. And in any event, Osama's mother was taken while he was on the road in Syria, traveled with him back to Saudi Arabia as just a young teenager, and gave birth to Osama. And then he divorced her, recognized her as a legitimate wife and Osama as a legitimate son, and arranged for her remarriage to a mid-level executive in his own company. And then she set up the step family that Osama joined, and that proved to be a monogamous marriage that lasts to this day, actually, in suburban Jeddah. And so Osama grew up as the sort of golden child in this suburban step family.
But with all the rights of a child of Muhammad.
With all the fully...
And
in fact, I think it's sort of psychologically suggestive because he was the source, he was the outsider to this new family. You can imagine his mother is 17, she's had a child away from her family in Syria, now she's being remarried to a new man, she enters into that union, they start to have children, and Osama is their ticket to wealth. I mean, he is everything. He is the reason that they're going to inherit many, many hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. He's the reason that they're getting hundreds of thousands of tax-free dollars a year in dividends as early as the 1970s. So.